Good evening, dear listeners. You're listening to Lament of Hope blog and podcast. I'm excited because I'm speaking with Serena Dyksen. And the topic we're going to talk about today is very close to my heart. Serena had an abortion when she was younger and has gone through the abortion recovery process and is now, really devoted her life to helping other people find recovery through an abortion as well. You can actually see her ministry. She found His Grace. It's going to be a website link that I'll have on the blog podcast as well as the Spotify episode, and you can take a look and see they have resources on there. They have ministries for men, for women, and it's really a safe space they really emphasize for people to come and to be able to bring the experiences they've had with an abortion and be able to talk with others who understand where they're at. Um, Serena, to get started, I want to ask you, is it hard for you to have to um continually talk about it a lot? I mean, I know for some women, especially ladies who've had an abortion, they might be kind of surprised that you'd even want to talk about it. Um, what for you? Why do you want to keep talking about it, though it's something that was really difficult that you went through?
Yeah, so for me, I think going through healing with Jesus, right? Jesus was just the key factor of finding freedom after abortion. And what I love is that um, the Lord met me in my most brokenness, right? And he lavished me in a love that I will never forget. And so, how can I not talk about that, right? Because my abortion doesn't define me. It's what Jesus did on the cross to set me free. And so, really, when I talk about abortion and healing, it's really from a place of saying, you know what? I was once lost and broken too, but let me tell you what Jesus can do to set you free. And so that's really where my heart's always going to land when I talk about abortion, just because there's so much hope, there's so much freedom. And just because abortion is part of our story, it
Hmm.
doesn't mean that that's the thing that defines us. That's not my identity. And so I want to give that hope to other people.
Hmm. For you, do you still experience hard days just mentally? Even though you have found that healing in Christ, do you still have moments and days where it's more hard than others?
Yeah, of course, abortion is child loss. And so there is a grief to that. And, that's okay to grieve the loss of your child. That's okay to remember them. It's okay to give them dignity. And so there's a healthy grief that you can go through. And I think there's a difference between sitting in shame and guilt and being feeling condemned, and then there's this place of like, hey, my family tree was changed, and that's really sad, and that's okay
Hmm.
to be sad about that.
Hmm. So, Serena, how did it start for you? Because you were young at the time. What's the story behind the abortion?
Yeah, so I was sexually assaulted at 13 and I was taken for an abortion. And at the time, I didn't know what abortion was. I had not ever heard that word before. And my parents were looking for help. And we went to a doctor who I say had a misplaced compassion. And he was the one that suggested abortion, and my parents agreed to that. And I think if they would have known what was going to happen that day, I think they would have made a different choice, because it was something that changed our lives forever, and our family never survived it. And so, it was my dad didn't recover from it. My mom had a mental breakdown and had to be in a put in a mental hospital for 2 weeks, and
Hmm.
it just was horrific.
Hmm.
And the doctor that suggested abortion, he still lives with that guilt today, and feels, he still carries that.
So when you were talking about sexually assaulted, was it by a relative or was it something you totally just had it came out of the blue for you or?
Yeah, I was sexually assaulted by a relative. And so yeah, it was definitely something, I mean, you don't plan for a sexual assault. So but yeah, that was part of the story. And you know, sexual assault is not a reason for abortion because it just prolongs your healing process. Abortion never healed that part of my story. It just prolonged my healing process.
Yeah. Are you okay describing how it happened, just to kind of give a picture to the listeners?
As far as the abortion,
The sexual assault and the abortion, just to kind of
mhm.
give a picture of, what you went through as a 13-year-old.
Yeah, so as far as being sexually assaulted, I mean it was horrific. It's never anything that you want to go through. And I always say for the abortion, at the time I didn't know what abortion was, but once I learned what abortion is, that was devastating because I couldn't help what someone did to me, but knowing the weight of ending an innocent child's life is a pretty heavy weight to carry. And
Yeah.
so it's one of those things of like I couldn't help the sexual assault, but abortion is ending the life of someone that didn't deserve for their life to be ended.
Now, for the sexual assault, had you had sex before at all, or was it like your first time
Mm,
even introduced to the subject?
Yeah, no, I had not. I didn't know anything.
Did you know what was happening at the time?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you're getting violated, so it was quite traumatizing.
Did you tell your parents right away, or was it something that you decided, I'm gonna just try to keep this from everybody for a while?
hmm so as far as when I was sexually assaulted, I did not tell anybody right away because there's a lot of shame and guilt to that. And then eventually I ended up telling a student at my school who reported it. And so
Oh,
that's
okay.
how, hmm yeah.
How did you feel about that? Like, when you found out it had been reported, was that difficult for you? Like, were you angry at your friend, or you were glad that someone had said something?
No, I think there was more of a fear.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think there's more of a fear to it, just the unknown of it. So just really didn't know what to expect.
And when your parents decided, okay, we're gonna get help for you, and they went to this doctor, was this doctor like your primary care doctor, or was this like a random doctor you went to, or?
Mhm. Yeah, no, that was our family doctor that we went to.
Okay.
Um, yeah. hmm
And what year would this have been?
In 89,
Okay.
yeah.
So, did you have the abortion the same day he suggested it, or did you?
You know, I don't know. It was no, because it wasn't the same day. I know it wasn't the same day, but my abortion was on Valentine's Day, so I do know that
Oh,
part of it.
wow.
And so, yeah, but it was not on the same day, and I don't know like how many days in between. I have no idea.
Did you know how many weeks along you were by the time you had an abortion?
I'm trying to think back. I have it in like I think it was 12 weeks or so. That's what I'm
Okay.
thinking. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
what was the experience like? Did it hurt? Did you not feel anything? I mean, what was it like, being a 13-year-old and here you are, you're not really understanding what's happening, but based on, the older people around you that this is supposed to help and it's supposed to help it
Mhm.
get better. What did the abortion procedure look like?
Yeah, so the day of the abortion, I was taken to a clinic in South Bend, Indiana, I was separated from my parents as a 13-year-old, and I was taken to a room which they called a counseling room. And the only thing I remember them saying was, I remember them saying something about a clump of cells, but that was all I remembered. And I didn't know what that was. I thought we were at a doctor's office and that they were going to help, but I didn't know how. The abortion was so painful. In fact, that's why my mom ended up having a mental breakdown, because she could hear me screaming for help, and they told her that she couldn't help me. And so
Hmm.
then after the abortion, my dad had to carry me over his shoulder, because I had hemorrhaged everywhere. If you can imagine, as parents, your daughter has been
Oh
sexually
yeah.
assaulted, and now you're at a abortion clinic and they're sending her out bloody. Just very traumatic. And um, abortion has a smell that I still can smell the abortion today. It's a smell that you don't forget. There's sounds that you don't forget. So those things stick with you. Um, yeah, so
When you're
it's
talking about
very,
smells, like smells of like instruments or smells of um blood, or what kind of
yeah,
smells?
it's just a very irony smell.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just has a distinct smell to it. And
Hmm.
women that have had abortions, we all say the same thing. We can smell the abortion.
And sounds, was that what kind of sounds are you talking about?
Yeah, so the sound of the machines that they use is a suction sound that you don't forget as well.
Yeah. So when you said you were actually being carried out by your dad, was it because you were still bleeding even when you
Uh,
were leaving?
yes. Uh-huh.
Hmm. So they didn't even help stop the bleeding before you left.
No. Mm-mm. Nope.
So when you got, I'm guessing in the car to get back home, how did they how did you stop the blood? Like, did you have just a towel in the back seat, or how did that work?
I I've tried to remember that part of it, and I don't remember a lot after.
Hmm.
I remember those details, but afterwards, because there was just a lot of trauma, a lot of stress happening, because not only did we just have the abortion, but also we have this sexual assault case that's happening. There was just a lot of dynamics at the time that was super stressful for our family.
Yeah. So for the weeks following this, pain level wise, symptom wise, what were you experiencing?
You know, I I would love to give you an answer. I don't know. I mean, there's just a lot
Hmm.
that I've blocked out since then. So I don't have a lot of details about that.
What's the first memory you do have afterwards? It's like starts a train of kind of like this is what I remember from here on out.
Yeah, so I think for me it was such a weird experience, because I think you block that out, and really what ended up happening for me was after the abortion when I was 16, I faced another unplanned pregnancy and went to Planned Parenthood. And they said, "You're young, you're in school, you're poor, you should abort your baby."
Yeah.
And at 13, I didn't know what abortion was, but at 16, I did.
Yeah.
So I chose life that day in Planned Parenthood parking lot. And things seemed really good. By the time I was 23, we had two little kids. We bought our first house and we thought life was good. And then
Was
about,
this the same dad that you had the kid with at 16 and you guys stayed
uh-huh,
together, or okay, so he was
yes.
supportive of your decision to keep the
Mm-hmm.
baby.
Yes.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
a blessing.
Yeah. It was a blessing. And we're still married 30 years later. So, yeah. But what ended up happening was I had a miscarriage, and that triggered a loss. What I now know is that it was a double grief, and I had never dealt with my abortion grief, but we
Mm.
didn't connect those dots. And then I had an ovary rupture, and I nearly bled to death and died. And then by the time I was 29, I had to have a complete hysterectomy. And we now know that that's
Wow.
all tied to the abortion, which we didn't know at the time. Um, and
Mm.
so we had all of that stuff. And then another thing that really ended up playing out for the abortion is when my kids hit middle school, I felt unworthy to be a wife and a mother. And I thought that my husband deserved a better wife and my kids deserved a better mom. Um,
Mm.
and so I had planned to, my plan was I was going to move out and just bless them on. And one night after a heavy night of drinking, and I had used, I just really found myself in a very broken place. And that particular night, I went to my car and I just prayed a simple prayer. And the prayer was, God, I have no one but you. And what I love is God saw me as a post abortive woman who was high and drunk, and he lavished me in a love that I'll never forget. And that night, I knew that it was time to go home, both physically and spiritually. And by God's grace, I made it home. And my husband welcomed me home, and we began our healing journey after, um, and really had to peel back some layers. um, but what I thought was that it was the sexual abuse that was my pain point, because that's what I had always heard, that sexual abuse was way, like if you're sexually assaulted, you have an abortion. And so I really believed that, I didn't think the abortion was really the
Mm.
issue at all.
Yeah.
Um, but interesting enough, when I went to my counselor, I would talk about the sexual assault and I found healing for that, but I would not talk about the abortion because I thought if he told anybody, um, which he attended my church, if they found out, that they would cast me out of the church.
Mm.
And so that was always in the back of my mind, which is so not the truth. If anybody's listening, that is not the truth. That's not how that works. Um, yeah. And so, yeah, I just found healing for my sexual assault. And then, uh, we just really saw God start to redeem our marriage and our
Mm.
family. And I was serving back at church, and things were really, really good. And then I got invited to watch a movie called
Mm.
Unplanned. I
Yeah.
didn't know what that movie was. I had no idea. And I literally went to the movie theater thinking I was just going to watch a Christian movie. And what ended up happening was, it was like watching my eyes unfold in front of my eyes. And it was really at the movie theater that I heard the Holy Spirit say, now's the time to tell the rest of your story. And I
Mm.
didn't know what that looked like. I had no idea. But um, yeah, my plan was to reach women in front of abortion clinic. And so I had gone to sidewalk training, and there was a sweet sister there that asked if I had ever gone through healing. And I rolled her because I thought I was healed and I was in a good space. And really, Holy Spirit was just asked me a question of, how do you expect to help others if you're not willing to go there yourself? And
Mm.
so I did go for healing, and it was life changing. And really, that's when God started She Found His Grace Ministries, and it was after that. Um, and what I didn't know at the time was that my story was going to hit national news, because of the abortion clinic that I had gone to. The abortionist had passed away, and they went through his stuff and they found that he had hoarded 2,411 babies in his garage. And I was
Wow.
devastated, if you can imagine.
Yeah.
But God was so gracious in meeting me in that. And from there, He just really has taken my pain and turned it into purpose. And now I get to help women around the world find healing after abortion.
Hmm. I gotta be honest, maybe I've heard of that doctor, but I don't remember, to be honest. There were so many. There was like a little I don't know what you'd call it, maybe a spike in like all these abortion doctor names. Of course, you had all these famous, you know, cases going on, all this. Um, I don't remember. Was this one based in your hometown or
Yeah, his name
okay,
is George Clawford.
okay,
Yep. So he was in South Bend. He had three abortion clinics, one in South Bend, Gary, Indiana, and Fort Wayne, Indiana.
okay. And so you actually hoarding the babies as in they're parts of the babies or kind of because how would that work if you've had an abortion from what I understand often a baby breaks apart. It's not like a whole baby all the
Hmm.
time. But is that
Hmm.
what he was hoarding or
Hmm.
hmm wow.
Hmm.
So that must have been a whole new wound for you because did you wonder if your baby was there?
Yeah, so that was one of the questions. And that night, I ended up that night I went and prayed again, and my question to God was, "Is one of the babies a Leona Grace?" And I heard Holy Spirit say, "Your baby and all the babies are with me. Why do you think I asked you to tell the rest of your story?" And that's really how God comforted me in that time. And there's just a comfort in knowing that she is with him.
Yeah.
And you know, um, yeah, just going through the healing process, I know God's hand was all over. God wasn't caught off guard by that. He wasn't caught by surprise. I might have been, but he was not. And what I know about God is he can be trusted and he's worthy of my trust. And so I just trusted God in the process of what he was doing.
Hmm. Well, I want to one thing that's jogged my memory I want to go back to a bit as you mentioned your parents, your mom really going through a really bad spell, seeing their daughter suffering. And probably, the helplessness of that. And then you mentioned your dad as well, not recovering from it. Um, how soon after the abortion did your mom end up in the mental hospital for 2 weeks? Was that, shortly after? Or was that a couple years later?
Mhm.
Or,
No, it was pretty shortly after. Hmm.
wow, okay. And
Yep.
did she share that the abortion was what was causing it? That trigger for her? Or did you just see this decline that just really clearly went back to that?
Yeah, between you have the weight of the abortion, what happened at the abortion clinic, all the things, that was a pretty heavy weight for her to carry. Um, and also she had her own trauma that she had not worked through. So you combine
Hmm.
all of that together, that's like a perfect storm for a lot of trauma that hits at once.
Did your mom ever find healing from that or no?
Um, I think she works through it. It's not really something that we personally talk about. Um,
Okay.
you know, yeah, yep.
Is it are you okay with me asking, is there a reason why you guys don't talk about it? Or you don't see eye to eye on it, or you're not comfortable going there?
No, it's just one of those things, especially, I try to, my mom's story is her story and my story is my story. And so it's
Yeah,
not a matter, I always land with, people have their own stories and it's for them to tell.
yeah. Well,
Mhm.
you mentioned your dad as well. How did your dad, how was he affected by the abortion?
Yeah, I mean, our family never recovered from the abortion. And so, um, eventually my dad, he left our family. And so, yeah, that's been something that he's had to carry. Um, and I don't know quite where he is in his healing, because it did affect our family in such a negative way.
Hmm. So you saw it really just probably break a lot of trust barriers, I would think, a lot of trust between each other. Um, have you ever seen your dad again or since he left, or you don't have a relationship with your dad right now?
No, I mean, like I said, he left our family, so yeah, so I don't see him, and it's not a matter of not wanting to have a relationship. It was just such a damaging thing that our family
Sure.
just didn't recover. So,
Well, for you, because a lot of people would say, you're choosing religion or you're choosing faith to kind of comfort you. Uh,
mhm,
but because you don't really want to face the fact that, like, if we're gonna go through it, your dad's left, your mom and you are having, you have a hard relationship at times. You yourself have been through, huge trauma since you were 13. Um, and people would say, why you keep bringing up God, but like if God was so good to you, why these things happen to you, and why do you see God's grace in these circumstances that to us, as a listener even is like, this is crazy. I wouldn't think of God in this at all. How do you respond to that? Because I'm even sure with the ladies you've talked to and all of the people that you shared your abortion story with, I mean, this question must have come up before too. It's like, why do you go to God as your source of comfort when if he's so good, he should have just stopped all this stuff from happening?
mhm. Yeah, so we live in a very broken, sinful world, right? And either our pain is going to come from our own sin choices or it's going to come from the sins of others, right? And so for me, sexual assault was a sin against me. Um,
Yeah.
was I angry at God at a point? Absolutely, I was angry with God. But what I didn't realize was, you know, the love that God had for me, in all of my brokenness. And that's the only thing that has given me comfort. The
Hmm.
world left me pretty beat up and broken and
Yeah.
pretty dried out. But God was always there. And we have to remember we have an enemy that comes to kill, steal, and destroy. And we need to put our blame in its rightful place. And that is because we have an enemy that would love to destroy us.
Hmm.
But God. And and I had to work through forgiveness. I had to work through all of that, because I was very, very angry at, my uncle. I was angry at my parents. I was angry at a lot of people, but it was a poison that I was drinking and hoping the other person died. And it was like, it was only hurting me. It wasn't hurting them. And
Yeah.
I had to make a choice to forgive. And that doesn't mean that what they did was okay, not by any means. It just means that I am choosing to release them and let God do what God's going to do. And
Hmm.
that changed my perspective on them and, really was freeing for me. Um, and so, yeah, so that's why I turned to God because, like I said, He saw me at my most broken state and loved me, um,
Hmm.
and set me free. So,
And it's you say set me free, and these instances of just feeling safe with God, which is interesting because so many people, I think the human sinful reaction, right? The gut reaction is to think, I won't be safe with God. If I share everything, it looks so terrible in front of a holy God that, I don't see that as a safe thing. But you mentioned even on your website, like just the emphasis you have as a ministry of wanting to encourage women and men that this is a place where, yes, we confront abortion as the wrong it is, but we can find healing from it and find safety in that sense of forgiveness, in that sense of community. Can you explain a bit more, for listeners, especially for someone who may be considering or has had an abortion? What does your ministry do to encourage women and men who have either gone through an abortion or are thinking about it?
hmm So for the men and women who have gone through abortion, if we go to God and we repent of that sin, He will forgive us, and He'll not only forgive us, but He'll cast it as far as the east is from the west. If there is someone considering abortion, we just talked about this in staff meeting. Of course, God's going to forgive you, but it doesn't come without consequences. And so
Yeah.
I think if you're considering an abortion, God is not caught off guard by this baby. God created that baby. And so, God is can be trusted that he is going to take care of you and baby. I think when there's something that I see is sometimes there's women in the church that will have abortions and they want a cheap grace. And it's like, come on, no, not a cheap grace. This is not a cheap grace.
Mm,
Abortion is something that will change your life forever. You can't end the life of your child and think that life is going to be normal again. That's not how that works.
mm,
And there is a consequence, there is for that abortion. And so, God's heart is not for them to have that consequence. He wants them to choose life, and He gives life and He gives it in abundance. And so,
mm.
I think women need to remember that because, the men and women who have had abortion would do anything if they could redo that again. They regret it deeply.
Mm. And so your ministry, how do you help with the recovery process?
Yeah, so for us, we have a biblical study that we go through. Our women's biblical study that they have is 24 weeks, and
Mm,
our men's is 12 weeks. And they can either do the class online or in person. And it's really a deep dive in understanding the character of God, understanding how to
mm,
grieve our children,
mm,
giving our children dignity. Um, and it's a
mm.
really, really beautiful process. It's a hard process. I wish, people are going to listen to this, and I will be perfectly honest with you. It is very, very difficult. It's not an easy journey, but it is
Yeah.
so worth it.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because you say that, but the journey with the Lord, the Christian's journey is hard but wonderful. It's a really
Yep.
strange paradox where it's not that we're promised no grief, no problems. In
Mhm.
fact, we may be promised more because,
Mhm.
we have this sense of we know our own fallenness, we see the fallenness of the world, and we long for perfection, we long for Christ. And I think there's a beauty to be had and like what you're saying, the hard, life is like a lament, but it's a lament of hope for the Christian with the final end.
Mhm.
Um, and kind of how you're talking about with these ladies, it's like as you're going through this process and you're digging up all this hard stuff, there is freedom to be had because you can experience forgiveness instead of all the coping mechanisms that you use to kind of cover up how you feel.
Mhm.
Um, So, Serena, I'm so grateful for your story and the fact that you want to share because so many women need to hear it. So many Christian women have had an abortion. It's really, it's something that's, been touched by so many people. And it's really, prevalent now. It still is. It's huge. Um,
Mhm.
what is, just before we leave, what is an encouragement you would give to a woman who's like, yeah, I really want to do that, but I'm really scared. I'm really scared
Mhm.
to face that because what if I lose, maybe I'm married now. What if I lose my spouse? I've never told my spouse, or what if I lose the respect of my kids? Or,
Mhm.
what if I'm not strong enough? I can't get I can't recover from this. I don't want to be able to kind of face that and experience that pain. How would you encourage a woman who's, willing but so scared to take that first step?
Yeah, of course. So, a lot of times we'll find with couples that finally they get brave enough to tell that part of their story, and their spouse will say, "Well, that's my story too." And you
Mm,
see couples end up finding healing together.
wow.
Or it's usually a case where that other person will say, "That's my story too." So that's the neat part that we get to see. Or there's so much compassion that we see, because
Mm,
the enemy would love, love, love to keep you silent. And God just He wants to unlock those shackles, because really, um, the thing is in the church, it's a thing that keeps us from being fully effective for doing kingdom work. And so, God was not caught off guard by your abortion. He knows, and he's just asking you to trust him with it. And we can't worry about what other people will say. At the end of the day, it's a personal relationship with the Lord. And it's such a beautiful journey to go on. And um, even if you're scared, and you reach out to us, you know what? We're the only ones that's going to know in our study that you are going through your abortion, and we can help walk with you and journey with you to help you tell people when you feel it's time to tell them. But it stays right in the class until you're ready to do that.
hmm. Well, Serena, thank you so much again for sharing. And for listeners, you'll see again a link to her website, whether you're thinking about abortion, whether you're even interested in potentially going into ministry to work with women who've had an abortion. The website is really great and we'll have a lot of information for you.
Mhm.
But Serena, thank you so much again for your time.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was such an honor, and God bless you for what you do.